Welcome to Registered, the podcast of the Catholic Register, where we'll be taking a look at the stories that graced all of our platforms over the past week. I'm Mickey Conlon, editor of the Register. I'm alongside reporters Luke Mandato and Quinton Amundson. Welcome, guys.
Good morning, Mickey. Thanks for having us on again.
Thanks for having us on, Mickey.
This week's episode is brought to you by Connaissance Travel and Tours, your trusted Catholic-owned and operated Canadian expert in transformative pilgrimage tours. Visit connaissancetravel.com. Well, guys, we've got some breaking news. Came in late last night. Probably not a lot of people, Canadian people, didn't catch it because of course, they were watching the Blue Jays down the Yankees, but it's something we've been following for, 2 years, and we're hoping for peace in the Middle East, and it looks like we've taken another step. So the first phase of the Israel-Hamas ceasefire is coming into effect, and we don't know exactly what's going on yet. Apparently, one of the first things will be hostage exchange. Finally, the last of the Israeli hostages will be released, we're hearing. So give me your thoughts on that, guys.
Yes, Mickey, I think you hit the nail on the head when you said not everyone is even exactly sure of what's happening yet or even knew that this was going on or in discussions last night. But waking up this morning to see it was kind of shocking. Like you said, it's another step towards peace, and we've seen steps towards peace previously that haven't really fully panned out. So I just think the general sense of what at least I'm feeling right now is a sense of optimism, but it's a curious and maybe a little bit of a restrained optimism. You know, we're seeing the headlines, we're seeing news about hostages being released, about Israeli forces being pulled from some different areas of Gaza. It's all good news on the surface, but there are still some major details to be worked out that we're all holding our breath to see how that plays out. Quinton, what do you think?
Well, the last time we discussed this a few weeks ago, I said definitely we have the ability of people who want to see peace in our world to just get on our knees and pray for God to provide. I mean, so far, God has provided a lot of hope, and this is a very promising situation. So just like a few weeks ago, we just got to continue to pray for successful implementation. And I mean, the good news, there seems to be a really good worldwide consensus. So many different countries saying we support this and we want to ensure the implementation of the various phases are completed with absolute haste, that there's no delay. And that's what we all have to really pine for right now as a worldwide community.
Yeah, I had read this morning from a BBC reporter saying that, this is a significant moment in sort of the grand scheme of this conflict. I think the exact words he used was, "This is no guarantee as for what is to happen next," right? So, it's an encouraging day for sure. I'm not sure it's a day where we can mark our calendars and say, this is the day where the conflict was fully compromised and ended. But it's a step in the right direction. And I think for a lot of people, even just a step in the right direction now is an encouraging sign to see.
Well, no guarantee is that's definite, because we've seen this before. It seemed that they were on the path to a cessation of all hostilities. And then the nonsense that comes in any negotiation, whether it be a business negotiation, and there's always two sides, and everyone wants their piece, and that's broken it down. And look what it's done. How many thousands more have died because of that? So we can only hope that this time this is it. So.
I think the last time that we had a sort of a talk about peace, the next day, or talk about a ceasefire rather, the next day it had already been broken. And that's where we got the clip of Donald Trump saying they don't know what they're doing, that infamous clip that's been still circulating. So, yeah, like you said, the only guarantee is that there is no guarantee. But
yeah. Well, there's a lot of people who will hate to hear this, but really, Donald Trump, he deserves a lot of credit for what is happening here. He may have used a bit of a bully pulpit to force the two sides to get to where they are. How can you forget if they don't agree to this, it'll be a very sad outcome. But someone, I guess, had to do it, and in some way, and he's done it, and has brought us to this point. And again, we can only hope to see that this is the end.
Well, it's a peace through strength doctrine. That's what he's always spoken about, and it does appear that it's relationships that he's cultivated, where people are willing to come together to forge what's possible. So, I mean, that is something that is to the U.S. president's credit, that he is very optimistic, and he definitely does have that resilience to try and see this through. And he has definitely spent a lot of political capital being very invested in this effort. So we'll have to really see where this materializes over the coming days. I mean, but he is going to be going to the Middle East to really see this thing through. So, I mean, that is a good signal of confidence that at least phase one appears to be well on track.
Yeah, and I think it was always going to be him as well. People can hate it or disagree with it all they want, but for someone like Quinton said, so sort of directly involved, even as not one of the major direct parties, as one of the parties as an onlooker, you knew he was going to have his hand in it, and we know what his personality is like Quinton said, peace through strength. I think he did exactly what he wanted to do. I think he knew what he was doing, pretty calculated the entire time, and now we're sort of seeing the result of that. And like you said, Mickey, people will get upset about it, and they'll try and move the goalposts, but there's no denying that his influence has resulted in what we're seeing in the headlines today, for sure, in one way or another.
Dare we say, on this October 9th, the day before they're going to announce the winner of this year's Nobel Peace Prize, Donald Trump, peacemaker, Nobel Peace Prize laureate. Dare we say it?
I mean, there's a few countries that are willing to put it forward. You think of the fact that he's received the official endorsement of Armenia, Azerbaijan, Pakistan, Cambodia, Rwanda, and Gabon. I mean, that was before yesterday. We're recording this very early on October 9th. I mean, could there be a last-minute groundswell of a couple of other nations stepping forward with endorsements today? We'll have to wait and see. Stay tuned to see what unfolds there.
Yeah, Mickey, I won't share my own endorsement on that claim, but I will say, if you're looking for someone to take the prize, I don't think in this modern day there's anything, that can catapult you towards it more than ending a war in the Middle East and seeing the war and the conflict we've been seeing in the Middle East in the past couple of years, the re-escalation of it. If you're the one directly, indirectly involved in putting an end to that, that's a pretty good resume to have when it comes time to pick a winner, right?
Well, Quinton, I know in between you're putting your bets down on your beloved Toronto Maple Leafs and your Toronto Blue Jays. I know you've been looking at the betting lines on Trump taking the Nobel. What are you seeing there?
Well, Mickey, I guess his odds went up like 5%, overnight. Like he was at 3%, and now it's around 7 or 8% on the betting lines. But there does seem to be kind of a clear favorite because the Peace Institute in Oslo has been promoting for well over 2025 the Sudan Emergency Response Rooms, which is a really decentralized group of humanitarian workers that are trying to help the people during the ongoing civil war that's been happening in the last couple of years. So not only are they, doing aid delivery, food, water, medical supplies, providing healthcare, but it's also the conditions that they're working in, the war-torn zones. So you think of the power of, an image being 1,000 words. Maybe the fact that you're going to be seeing all these people on the front lines, that's a very powerful endorsement of the work that they're doing. So maybe that's a pretty good reason why they seem to be getting a lot of traction among predictors.
Well, and that's the thing. We of course in North America, we're a media saturated society, and of course the only things that matter to us is what happens here, and it's especially true in the U.S. So that's why so much of the focus gets on Donald Trump. Well, now we see here's this group in Sudan working for peace, and no one over here, I would dare, if you could walk into a room full of 100 people, if you could find 2 people that could tell you who this group is, I'd be shocked. So it's not always the big names that win this award, and thank God for that. They
seem to be really drawn over the years to, various, groups, because, that's a, powerful thing, because peace is created by different people coming together and talking, and it's the power of the group always being more magnified than the individual. So, as much as, there's a lot of credit for, one man's negotiation skills, compared to, the images of people on the front line, that's something that, will probably be factored into the equation a little bit when they meet to announce the nominees tomorrow.
Yeah, and I think you're judged on your means and your resources as well. I think that's definitely something that goes into play. If you look at, Trump is sort of the figurehead of like you said, the negotiation skills, and he wants to say that, this was his doing, but you look at other organizations and what they have and what they're working with, that's arguably more impressive in some cases when you see the peace that can result from it. So yeah, it's just an interesting conversation about, like you said, Mickey, I don't think a lot of people would know them by name, but when you look at what they do based on what they have, it's pretty incredible stuff.
Well, there are so many more names out there. There's, lists, as long as, your arms and your legs together, how many people have been nominated for this. I wrote a column this week, and of course the headline, Trump for the Nobel? How about Pope Francis? And when you look at it, it would be a nice award for the late pontiff. He's just one. He's apparently one of the nominees. We don't know for sure, but every pope since I believe it was Pope Benedict XV has been nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize. None have made it. None have ever won it, and which is a bit of a shock, especially when you look at Pope John Paul II, who along with so many others, but he was such a key factor in bringing down European communism. So it's possible. Whether any pope would ever lose any sleep about getting the Nobel, I'm not sure. But every pope has been on the front lines of peace, dating back to our first fella in Pope Peter.
The people do tend to gravitate towards, the remarks made by, Pope Francis and Pope Leo and all their predecessors, the remarks that they make about, Ukraine or what Israel and Gaza. There is weight to it. And there definitely were a lot of great efforts from Pope Francis, even in the years when he was a little bit more infirm. Like, he would go to where he needed to go to do good in the world and to try to foster a message of solidarity and dialogue. And that is something that would really appeal to the overall mission of the Nobel Peace Prize institution, since it was founded many decades ago.
Mickey, I would have loved to see what the odds would have been like for John Paul II if something like Polymarket was still around. I know Quinton was talking about what the odds looked like, because the fact that he never won, I think is just a shame. I think it launched in 2020. So even I think some of Francis's best years there, and in the early years as the Holy Father, what the odds would have been like for that, because it is crazy, and I'm not sure a lot of Catholics know. I mean, maybe they do, but the fact that a pope has never won this prestigious Nobel Peace Prize is kind of crazy to me to think about.
Yeah. So, okay, we're going to leave the international scene, and that brings us right back to what's going on here in Canada. And Quinton, you've done our cover story this week, and it's about the fertility rates in Canada going way down, while at the same time, funding for abortion is going up. So we've got this problem in Canada where we're always talking about we want to have a bigger population. Well, here we go. The fertility rate is going down. It's minuscule compared to so many other countries. Yet here we are at the beginning of life doing so much funding to kill babies in the womb. And even at the end of life, we are encouraging MAiD. So why don't you tell us, Quinton, some of the numbers and some of the conversations you had around this?
Well, it was, like you said, very minuscule. It's so bad that we are rated as a lowest of low fertility nation by the United Nations. So 1.25, any country below 1.3, total birth fertility rate. So if you want to have a country that has sustainable population growth, you need to have a replacement fertility level of 2.1. So 1.25, significantly less than 2.1. So we have been, greatly degraded. People are not really having the babies that they used to. And the really good chat that I had with Peter Copeland from the MacDonald Laurier Institute, he traces it, as do many experts, back to the 1960s sexual revolution, continuing to reverberate, where there was a major shift from relationships, for that being primarily about, being in marriage, having families, and really trying to cultivate a lot of fruitful generations, to a little bit about casual encounters, short-term relationships, more cohabitation relationships, instead of actually coming together in matrimony and creating a familial household. So, that has really wrought a lot of problems. And it's created a lot of, instability of our country, where we're having to continually turn to immigration to paper over our problems with repopulating. But the problem is eventually, Copeland said that you could sometimes have people come into this country eventually adopt some of the similar tactics. So that may not even work in the long run. And we just have a country that's very unfriendly towards making it possible for people to have children, cost of living, not having tax benefits for families. There's just a host of factors that are making it difficult for people to have kids, but the seas are being parted if you want to have life terminated, whether it be MAiD access or this funding to create more access for abortions. So it's quite a stark portrait.
Well, both of you guys are in that younger generation where you're starting to look at, all right, maybe meeting a gal, having children, and your friends are in that same boat. Luke, what do you hear among your friends on this? Like, are they interested in having kids? This is a good question.
I'll say this, Mickey. I think the first thought that came to my head as Quinn was sort of recounting that story was the cost of living and the idea of how expensive it can be to start a family, especially nowadays here in Canada. I can't speak for all of my peers and people my age, of course, but I will say that within my friend group, the majority of us are still either single, in a relationship, but nothing really extended beyond that. And I'm in my early 20s. Even people I know that are in their late 20s, it's pretty uncommon to see marriages beginning, let alone families. It's big news within the friend group if we hear news that someone, we went to high school with is getting married or starting a family. It's almost, we joke about it as it's like an impossible feat, sort of to the same extent as we joke about, the possibilities of owning a house. I think a lot of it comes back to just being in a place where, I don't think it's a maturity thing. Like you said, I don't think anyone my age is morally against starting a family or seeking marriage and starting a family in that sense. I think it's more so just the cost of living, uncertainties about the future that have really put a damper on, that vision that was so prominent many years ago. And while it's easy to blame, Hendrix and the Beatles and the 60s sexual revolution, that's saying jokingly, of course, Quinton, there's a lot more current factors at play in terms of financials that I think are making it difficult for people to do that now. And like Quinton said, when you look at it in contrast to MAiD and abortion, we have a serious problem on our hands.
Well, we know here in Toronto, of course, one of the more expensive cities in the world, let alone Canada. Quinton, you're out west. Calgary got its issues, I'm sure, with affordability, but not like we do here. But is it very similar to what Luke was just describing?
Oh, it is very similar. I don't think any part of Canada is really immune from the cost of living prices in terms of trying to find a home, being able to move out and strike it on your own, from your parents' place, or just being willing to have the wherewithal to have enough capital to start, families is quite something. I've talked to people, and I mean, it used to be when the conversation in our country was, well, when are you going to stop having kids? That's what was possible. And now it's, when are you going to start having kids? Or if you could start having kids? Because unfortunately, some people are just writing it off, and they're writing it off in their late 20s or their early 30s. And that's a very sad thing to see, no doubt about it, because what were we called by God to do? Be fruitful and multiply.
Absolutely. And I talked about some of the reasons that people are feeling that way, but yeah, I think you said it best, Quinn. It's an unfortunate, sad thing. I do have a friend who's a few years older than me who just did have a baby girl with his wife, and it's a beautiful thing. He has a beautiful wife. He has a beautiful daughter. He's a few years older than me. His life is it's incredible. It's blossoming. It's exciting. But the running joke among my other friends are, well, his life's over now, right? And I don't think the conversation should be his life is over. I think it should be his life is just beginning. His life is just starting to get good. But because of the way, they say that because they're saying, goodbye to your money and your social time, right? And I think that's a whole other conversation about the idea of a social life when it comes to starting a family, that we don't have to get into that. But, we have to sort of switch the narrative into saying, if you're young and in your 20s and starting a family and having kids, it's not your life's over. It's your life is just beginning.
Well, I think part of changing the conversation is you want to almost have cultural examples. I mean, changing policy is good. And I mean, being able to just have that independence, but you also do want to change those attitudes that have gotten within our culture. So, I mean, people have been, maybe talking, jokingly, that as soon as if Taylor Swift has a child with Travis Kelce when they get married, maybe that could inspire millions of Swifties to consider that as a very appealing lifestyle. I mean,
hopefully within marriage.
Yeah, within marriage, of course. And then, I mean, before he died, political assassination. What did Charlie Kirk always say? Get married, have more kids than you could afford. It's the best decision you could possibly make. So, I mean, if you could have a bunch of different cultural figures, it could create maybe a cumulative effect. And I mean, we have been talking recently about how there's a revival of young people going back to church. I mean, the church, we always talk about family. So if there could be a bunch of different cultural forces, aligning here that's pushing a more pro-family message, we'll have to see where that goes.
I'll just say briefly as well, I think it's good for, society as a whole. We talked last week about, was it last week or 2 weeks ago, my journey out to the men's group in Stouffville. A lot of guys there were young fathers or planning to be young fathers. And you talked about Charlie Kirk saying, have kids, get married, have more kids than you can afford. I think Tucker Carlson was someone else who was a big proponent of that, having kids when you're young, even in the face of financial challenges. I can say, from my buddy's experience, I've never seen, someone my age, kind of goofy, kind of young, not sure what to do with his life, grow up within the snap of your fingers when he became a father. That's something that's going to benefit society. Young men getting into healthy relationships, healthy marriages, and having a healthy relationship with their offspring is good for society, right? We talked a lot about masculinity during the talk and what good Christian Catholic masculinity looks like in that men's group. I don't think there's a better reflection of that than in fatherhood. And if we discredit that and we say, no, not being a father is completely fine, not saying it isn't, but when we write it off completely, I think that does some damage to society as a whole as well. Mickey?
Yes, definitely. So I can't go against you guys on any of that. So, but what I will do is I think we've got to keep this moving along. And just in the last few days, we marked National Day of Truth and Reconciliation in Canada. And for us in the Catholic Church, the October 4th and 5th weekend, we had the annual collection for the Indigenous Reconciliation Fund. I know, Luke, you spoke to Noah MacDonald from the Archdiocese of Toronto about that, and from the Archdiocese of Toronto and Michipichokan. I am so sorry, I probably blew that pronunciation, but the First Nation. How about you tell us a little bit about that conversation?
Right, Mickey. Yes. So we did have a chance to connect. We had a bit of conflicting schedules through the editorial and his work as a canon lawyer within the Archdiocese of Toronto. So we just communicated a bit through email, sharing our thoughts about the collection. I think what was most interesting about our discussion were just him sharing his, I want to say not his gratitude, but his joy about seeing how things have sort of progressed in terms of truth and reconciliation and the Catholic Church and the Archdiocese of Toronto specifically. He spoke about his hope for a continued united move forward, not getting complacent, talking about the yearly collection fund. Of course, we don't know too many specifics on this year's collection just yet. But we do know the Archdiocese has been doing a number of things, supporting a number of different programs and organizations that deal with truth and reconciliation. So he shared his hopes that will continue. He shared some examples of how it's helping Indigenous communities, in different parishes throughout Canada, not just within the Archdiocese of Toronto. So it was really a positive talk on a topic that's kind of tricky to traverse at some points. So it was just really beneficial to see. And, we thank Noah, of course, always for giving his input on things like this. And we hope to speak with him again sometime in the future, maybe when the funds are sorted out, and see where we stand now at the end of this year.
Well, and for those who don't know about the IRF fund, is a promise from the Canadian bishops, and this all comes out of course, the Pope Francis's penitential pilgrimage to Canada 3 years ago. So the bishops have got a 5-year plan to raise $30 million to fund a lot of programs for the Indigenous population. And the numbers, I believe, we're at, it's more than 21 million raised. That was going into this past weekend's collection. So, and I've seen where there's talk that it's expected that it's going to blow past the 30 million, which would be fantastic to see.
Yes, I think the term used in Cardinal Leo's letter to the faithful about this was tracking favorably towards that trend. which is it's an encouraging sign to see. And like you said, I've also seen reports that not only is it tracking favorably, it's looking to surpass it as well. Which, what more can you ask for? It was a lofty goal, and to see them meeting it with such precision is a great thing to see.
Well, and it's the Catholics in the pews that are being asked to donate to it, and they're doing it, which is very, very nice to see. So, well, guys, I think that's going to bring this episode of Registered to a close. We'd like to thank you for joining us, and thanks to Quinton and Luke, of course, as always. And we hope you can join us next time for Registered. Meanwhile, for all your Catholic news, be sure to stay informed at catholicregister.org. And of course, I'd be remiss if I didn't thank our sponsor of this week's episode, Connaissance Travel and Tours, which is your trusted Catholic-owned and operated Canadian expert in transformative pilgrimage tours. Visit connaissancetravel.com. Okay, thank you, and we hope to see you next week.